Okay, so welcome everybody. I did not see any newbies.
I think it's standard faces.
All right, let's go ahead. All right, usual notices, heads up. Y'all at this point, y'all know why we're here. Antitrust policy, learn it, know it, live it. Don't think we have any first timers today. The usual suspects. Doesn't look like we have quorum today, but we shall proceed. So today, this is kind of the usual stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the elections for 2026 officers. We'll talk about or continue this discussion that we had last week around 2026 events. When we talked a bit about going to a very content marketing centric strategy and away from an event centric strategy. We had a good discussion about discomfort that some folks felt with moving completely away from events. That having some kind of physical presence in the world seems advisable, but let's look at a couple of different options for that and see if we can close on that discussion. Then we'll talk a little bit about the transition to content marketing strategy. And then one of the things that's going to be critical in a content centric strategy is how are we going to deal with vendor generated content?
Right.
And then we'll see if there's any other business, and away we go. All right. Minutes from last week. If anyone's checked out the minutes, anyone object to the minutes being approved from last week?
Nope.
No objections. All right. Usual reminders, the jobs board, the newsletter. Keep the newsletter coming. I know it's coming into the end of the year. Everyone's tired, but we got to keep the newsletter fresh. Please bring them in. New blogs, technical blogs perform well. Continue to do that. Use the badge. All right, officers, elections. So we need to get elections are coming up here for new officers in the CCC. So outreach committee chair and vice chair will be elected in this next round. I see some chat going. Did I miss something in the chat?
No, I just pasted the CCC newsletter submission form on just so now you can submit.
Got it. Okay. Darn it. Sorry. Full screen. All right.
Sorry, after you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to remind people that A, this is very important, but B, people can stand again. You can also stand for both chair and vice chair, or just one or the other. So that's what I was going to say.
So yeah, exactly. And so the nominations are open for another couple of days until this Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific time in US. Anybody can nominate either themselves or nominate another member. So if you want to see somebody on the list as a nominee, or you want to raise your hand, please go ahead and send emails to Rian and Renew to go ahead and get yourself or your nominee on the list.
Although it is considered good manners to ask someone before nominating them.
That is true. That is true. It is not required, but it is courteous to do so. I do want to let folks know that I am not going to be doing the officer thing again next year. We are, as you guys probably seen in the news, we're a little short-staffed here at Intel lately, and duty calls in a number of other areas for me. So I've got to kind of ease up on my commitment to the CCC So I will, in the words of Lyndon Baines Johnson, will not seek, nor will I accept the nomination of the committee to be the co-chair of the committee again next year.
But we thank you very much indeed for your expertise and time and service. It's been much appreciated.
No problem. Okay, so the voting opens next Tuesday. The premier members get to vote only. So general, startup, academic members do not get to vote, but they can put forward nominations. The voting is open for almost a week, closes up Monday the 24th, results announced on Tuesday the 25th. And again, if you want to raise your hand or raise somebody else's hand for them, please send a note to Rian or Renew. Okay.
I'm also very happy to have a conversation with anyone who's considering it. I'm sure that Rachel and Mike would also be happy to talk to people who are thinking of stepping forward so they understand a bit about it.
All right. Thanks, Mike. A quick note on the IDC research. I didn't have this on the agenda slide, but real quick, we gathered, so the IDC research is getting really close. All the member edits and comments were gathered together and returned to IDC. They've come back and said that they've addressed the comments and the suggestions and have returned the revised version post comments to their editing department, that they're going to do cleanup on it and final copy editing, and we're expecting the release candidate back from them in about a week. So about November 19th, we should get the what they would say is their 99% or 100% proposal for the research, and at long last we could have this project done. Dan and the team in Linux Foundation press relations, they've circulated a draft of a press release. I've seen several of the officers commented on it, and they're doing revisions on that as we speak. Dan, I don't know if there's any update on that.
Just at this point, if you all want to circulate it any more widely, let us know. Or if you're fine with just the staff and the chair and co-chair reviewing, then we're in good shape.
I think we're probably okay with just the staff doing the comments and stuff on it. I don't know if I'm sure at some point we will run it past the governing board, and we'll probably get all the help we need.
Okay.
Not sure necessarily need to pass it by the GB just for a press release. So we might do, but
yeah.
Just also a reminder, the last GB meeting is next Wednesday. So can we get that press release, at least like draft completed or revision completed by then, so then we can.
Oh, yeah.
As I said, I don't think we need to have it in front of the GB, and it's going to be entirely budget related. There's not going to be
I'm talking about like I'm not talking about like in meeting review. I'm talking about like offline review.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, that's a good call. Sorry.
And I mean, my one big comment on it, Dan, was I don't think it was like hooky enough. It kind of announced that, and here's what I mean by that. It announced that the CCC had done a research report, and there was research, which is okay. But I'm thinking about what is going to get a particular press outlet to grab onto it and write about it. And so I think what I suggested is try to get more stats into the press release that might try and hook somebody into writing about it. Things about particular countries, things about particular industries that might, find a press outlet that covers financial services or healthcare. They might see themselves represented in that, and they're like, okay, what's this? I want to look at that more closely.
6 exciting things about confidential computing you'll never believe, number 2, that sort of thing.
There you go.
Yes, I saw that comment, and that's no problem. Well, I'm sure that the PR team will work that into the revised draft.
All right,
Okay.
sounds good. Thanks. Okay, event strategy, an A/B test. An AB being the most vocal one. There is no connection between me calling this an A/B test and trying to bait you into a conversation. Okay, so 2 possibilities on if we said, look, we're not going to abandon events. We're going to do some events, but we need to prioritize. Option A says, we are an ecosystem organization. The CCC is here to foster and support the ecosystem of contributors to confidential computing. Our events strategy, in as much as we're going to continue to support events in 2026, we should, prioritize and focus on supporting the ecosystem. So that's going to mean we are going to visibly and, by virtue of sponsorship, financially support the ecosystem. We're going to help coordinate among the CCC members, and we're going to try and recruit new CCC members at these conferences that are really focused on specifically on confidential computing. So that's going to be OC3 and or CC Summit. So under this strategy, we would get sponsorships at one or both of those events, and that would probably be the majority of our budget for events would be focused on those. Option B is, look, we are the ecosystem. The ecosystem knows and loves confidential computing. There's no point in preaching to the choir. We need to evangelize to the unconverted. So that means get the word out about confidential computing in new contexts and focus on growing awareness and building adoption among constituents that may not have heard of us or only know a little bit about confidential computing, to bring them in. Mike, I see your hand up. Give me 1 second. So this would be new sponsorship at, searching for a word, but thematically aligned conferences. So something like the PET Summits, financial technology conferences, either technology conferences, associated with privacy and security, or kind of some of the big hitter industries that are adopters of confidential computing. Finance, healthcare, government could all be options. So we could either say we're going all A, we could do all B, we could do a little of A and a little of B, but it depends on what kind of level of priority. Mike, question.
Yeah, so I think I might spin it slightly differently for B and say, rather than evangelize the unconverted, it's about helping those people who know a bit about it and want to be using confidential computing to adopt it more easily. So it's not so much about telling people about it, it's about easing the way in. Now, which is slightly different, right? And I think that's kind of what I would be leaning towards from my point of view. And I think that's probably what from the conversations with the GB and the sort of strategy they said they wanted to do, which was about sort of best practice and reference architecture stuff. I think those are the sorts of folks. So it's not people who've not heard about it. It's about people who've heard about it but don't know how to get into it. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that also provides a good opportunity for, you think about what we did at the OSFF, where we had a sponsorship, but we basically just created a window for members to come in and show people in the financial services industry pathways to getting certain things done. Using this technology, we can help you do this or achieve this goal or implement this use case. And so I think that was, this is kind of what it would look like if we pursued option B. Rachel.
Yeah, and also the reason why we present option B is to also realign our next year's activities with the new GB strategy focus. And then we wanted to have the rooms and then focus some of those events that were previously allocated to some of those industry events into new opportunities and events that are more industry or like more customer centric, right? And more other initiatives focused and so then we have the budget for potentially new events. However, that would have to make some trade-off of reducing some existing activities that we've supported.
Right. Sorry, I
And I
can't
think
see
another-
anybody, so I'm going to switch my view here a little bit just so I can see the video.
Yeah, I was going to add another thing, which is that there's different sorts of things we could do. I mean, I'm available to speak at events, and I do that quite a lot, and I'm happy to do that. Obviously, it's easier to get speaking things where we sponsor them, but on the other hand, sponsorship sometimes involves us having to do things like booth staffing, which takes a lot of organizing, and we need to have really good engagement from people even once we've organized it, right? Getting speakers at things is sort of the next stage down in terms of difficulty. But what does sponsoring mean? You know, what does organizing or being part of an event mean? Is it just sending me, or is it just having a splattering of speakers, or is it getting a track, or is it all of those things plus booth duty? And the more of those we do, the more hard work it is on this group, and the more work we need to do to gather people together to speak and get involved. That said, you know, we managed to get people together for the San Francisco event, the Hilton event. Great, and we managed to do the same for OSSF. Great again, but again, that's kind of what I was thinking. Both of those, I think, as you're saying, Mike, were kind of leaning towards the how do you actually do this stuff rather than you know nothing about it, let us tell you.
All
So
right.
just to add on that, right, and then for the unconverted events, and those will be very different strategic goals in alignment than like industry supported, where we are heavily involved. So those will be really good opportunities to show the presence without overcommitting ourselves. And then we've also introduced some other line items in terms of budgetary proposal by increasing the tiers and decreasing the tiers. And then really kind of think about whether we need the booth, probably not. And then what kind of level engagement that we want to participate while still getting us out there.
I'm going to throw it open to Ab, Jens, Leo. Any guys, any thoughts? Laura, I see Laura joined. Excellent. Any thoughts on which of these you guys would like to see us leaning into? If we wanted to, you know, continue to invest in events to have a physical presence in 2026, A, B, some combination of A and B.
So I'll jump in. Apologies that I was not able to join. Conflicts, of course. I don't know how you get conflicts at 8 a.m., but conflicts. So option A has, based on my personal experience, working with confidence computing for the last, I guess 7 years or so, I've seen that the ecosystem really has gained the most attention and has gotten the most momentum for CC. And they help, I guess, really convert and evangelize to the unconverted, right? So if we are supporting the ecosystem, they are also out there evangelizing. And I think as some of the, like the Intels, the AMDs, the NVIDIAs, we're out there trying to also evangelize to the CSPs, right? So supporting the ecosystem isn't just the ISVs, but it's also the CSPs. And I think we get the most momentum there. And then that helps evangelize the unconverted. But that's my personal view based on what I've seen over the last few years.
So what sort of events would you be thinking then we should be targeting if we were to do that?
I mean, what I've seen is a lot of work being done. RSA was great. We had a ton of different ISVs that were there, as well as CSPs that were talking about confidential computing. And if we can get into that narrative and make sure that we're supporting them and helping them, that's great. Additionally, the CSP events like Ignite. What is it? What is the one that's coming up in December? Is it Reimagine, Reinvent for AWS? Those events get a lot of momentum. And then the NVIDIA booth just last week or the week before in DC, we had hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of people that were just becoming educated on what CC is. And, we're just a partner offering a CC solution, right? So I think going to those types of events, industry events, plus, the CSP or maybe, I don't know what we would be considered. Maybe I don't even know what we are. Hyperscalers. I don't know. AMD. What would we consider ourselves? Intel. What would we consider ourselves? Hardware vendors, because we're not just hardware.
IHVs probably.
HVs,
yeah. So if we can focus on that, I think we'll see a lot of traction. That would be my
What's
recommendation.
interesting about what you said there was that a number of the things you talked about are not events we could sponsor. They're things that we could turn up at if there's a member there already, and I hugely support that. RSA, yes, we can pay to have a booth, but things like Ignite or Reimagine or Google Cloud Next are things which either out of our league or there's no opportunity to sponsor anyway. Now, I think there's huge opportunities for making ourselves available, making me or other people, partners available to go to existing things where we can support, like the NVIDIA booth last week. Sounds fantastic. I'd love to have known about that. But so I think there's a hidden question here, which Mike didn't put down, which is what other things could we do without spending huge amounts of money in sponsorship? Is that a fair way of putting it, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that if we said, hey, look, we want to do a little bit of both. There's different ways to show up at events, and there's the most obvious one is you throw down tens of thousands of dollars to become a high level sponsor, and then enjoy the perks that come along with that, reserved speaking slots, points on panels, booth presence, all that stuff. There's other ways to do it that are probably less expensive. All right, I saw both Jens come on video and Ab come off mute, so I think there might be some other comments here.
Come on, Jens.
Yeah, I have to double down on what Laura said, but also I wanted to chime in on one other element in there, and maybe I don't know how I'm not familiar with cost topics that much, but maybe there is also something else. So number one, what Laura said, I can totally double down on that. Absolutely the same experience. But also, Mike, I think you highlighted finance, healthcare, and government. And I have to look more into it, and maybe I missed something, but government really, as we experience it right now, is a much bigger topic than just last year. Governments are looking way more into that, way more, and I think very often in the stage of where confidential computing is in its journey right now, very often in similar innovative developments, you had the case that government adopted something to a much bigger scale as even the industry first. And I think that is an opportunity that is maybe a bit underserved in this environment. And there are government conferences, there are government events where they actively look into new developments and get it through into the system. MITRE obviously is one voice here in the US about this. The EU is also doing a lot around that, but I think that should be also in that context maybe a bigger focus, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there right now. Personal experience.
Yeah, so just to echo on that, right? And then just to, first of all, great feedback from Laura's perspective. That's really helpful. And then for the audience context, and so the outreach scope has been decided to reduce, right? Because there was a lot of budget, a lot of spending in the previous years, and to maintain that overall balance, then it was already decided on the governing board level that the overall scope of outreach will be reduced. However, that doesn't mean that the ROI and all those investment or the return will be diminished. And in fact, we're restructuring all those strategies and to optimize all the spending we have and to get even better results for next year. And in terms of Jens, your context, right? That's exactly going to be the focus for the option B here, and to really kind of open up those menus and make sure that we're aligned with the strategies and market shift going forward, and what kind of the content and what kind of partners we wanted to partner with in terms of those channels. That's my comment.
Okay, Ab, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So I guess I'm agreeing with what most has been said. I think having a mix of option A and option B would be good. I still believe that we still need a focal event that is 100% CC. We already expressed that both to in the outreach committee as well as to OPAIC, that the conference has turned a little bit recently in CC Summit into a more and more of an AI conference talking about CC or how CC works instead of the other way around. And I think the other, so that's one thing. So, but having a focal event where all the, and I'm not advocating for CC Summit specifically. It could be OC3. I'm not here to advocate to one event over the other, but I think that has a lot of benefit of all the ecosystem coming together, focusing 100% on CCC. That's one thing. The other concern I would have for not having this is also I'm wearing my CCC hat here when I'm talking about this. Is I guess for larger companies, whether Premier members or not, we have visibility. We have to also to think about other of our colleagues in startups, that how we give them visibility. That's something also we need to take into account. I'm not saying that we need to make sure that we are as well servicing properly, right? So, and I agree with Laura about in addition to option A and B is basically how to make sure that whether it's CCC or partner companies are pushing or promoting CC in for example, Ignite, Build, those type of CSP and so on. I think on the option B, one of the things that we need to be, and that's a feedback I personally received often in conversations around the topic, whether it's conferences or side conversations, is CC is seen as primarily as a cloud technology. As you guys, some of you have mentioned, government and other like hybrid deployments are things that as well as are starting to show interest in CC. And that's something that basically we need to see how we can promote that, as well as that CC is not just for cloud deployments.
And that's I'm gonna +1 on that one, because we not only did we see it in the IDC research, but we've just I've just seen it in our engagements with customers, which is everyone's like, yeah, confidential computing in the cloud makes sense. Confidential computing on-prem, I don't see the value. What's the use case? I don't understand. And so I think we need to we got work to do there. Okay, yeah. I keeping an eye on the clock here. I think what I have heard is I don't think anybody is comfortable with 100% A or 100% B. I think folks are like, hey, we got to do a little bit of both. So what if we let me put a proposal on the table. If we said, hey, look, it's like 25% A, 75% B, you know, and then we would come up with a plan that would kind of match that rough proportion.
I think what's sorry, Mike, before we go into the percentages, and I don't know how we come up, and at one point we have to make a guess, so I have no issue with that. But what are the metrics? What is the criteria for success? What we consider, whether it's option A or option B, how do we measure that, you know, at the end of 2026 and say, yep, option B worked well because we achieved XYZ, option A as well, or no, but maybe the percentage was not. It just, that's the part that kind of not clear to me here. Maybe it is been discussed before, but
it's yeah, and that's we're kind of going back a bit to some of the, you know, the success metrics in the strategy where if you were saying, you know, what are the metrics for supporting the ecosystem? I think a lot of them are measured somewhat in terms of, they become measurables for the consortium itself. You know, new members, you know, it's almost like a consortium health becomes your success metric, or community health is your success metric in A. In as much as something like an OC3 is like almost exclusively an ecosystem event. Then if you do something like Pet Summit or Government Technology Summit or Healthcare Technology Summit, then your success metric shifts more to how many butts did I put in the seats at my events? You know, how many new people did I expose confidential computing to? How many new leads for you know, demos or POCs did we pick up? Those are the kinds of things that we would start, you know, tracking as success metrics in B. It's less about...
Yeah, sorry, I literally remember 2 points I forgot to mention. Actually, even for option B, recruiting new members should be a metric as well, in my opinion. That doesn't, if anything, they could be like a financial institution will be interested in what we're doing and they start promoting. I don't think it's exclusive to only option A. One other point I wanted to make on option B, not to discount it, as I said, I think a mix of two would be great. We just have to be careful. We are the outreach committee of diluting CCC brand as a consortium into other, like, you know, PET itself, or like it maybe creating confusion or brand confusion there. So just another point I wanted to make right here.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you for that feedback, right? And I think what we're doing, either option A or option B, all the success metrics, and there's a reason why we're doing this and to align with the broader CCC strategy, because there's been strategy shift that was already approved, and we're aligning the next year's initiative. So we're not proposing out of nowhere. It's to better align with next year overall CCC's goals.
Okay, I'm just this is great.
Just to give one example, if I may, of actual ROI we can measure at OSSF, we had coming to our track representatives from 20 different companies who are not members.
Yeah, and see that's yeah, and I have a bias. As I think I've well advertised my bias here, which is preaching to the choir. I think the choir is on board, you know, and what we need to go is get more people into the choir. So let's, you know, I have a B bias, I will admit, but I also understand that, you know, we do have a community, and we need to keep that community supported and healthy. So, how do we? I mean, I guess I'm keeping an eye on the clock. We got some other stuff to talk about. Is the path forward here to just basically take the feedback from the discussion today and come back with a proposal? Because where this is going to get reflected is in the budget. And so the budget is going to show we're peeling off, you know, X numbers of tens of thousands of dollars that we will do events and we will budget, say if we're going to peel out $100,000, we're going to budget 30 for, community, CCC community events, $70,000 for, new events, new outreach beyond that. I mean, is that what I think that might be the best way forward? And then we're going to either that's the plan or that's not the plan.
So the challenge with that is all those different events have different tiers, and I think it's better to understand what our mix or what the percentage or the goals are than to align the budget, because you can always lower or increase the tier.
Yeah.
Right. And then with the new events, the challenge is that we don't know the quotes. We have the bulk numbers for their past years that we can quote from the public. So we have some fair understanding of those new events and what sponsorship are going to look like. And what's unclear and uncertain is that how much efforts are going to be putting into those new events. So I would like to budget for some uncertainty around that. And for the past industry events, we have very clear understanding of how much that's going to be and what kind of a level of membership engagement or those type of operational costs that would go into it.
Yeah. And given where we are in the year, we're midway through November, and we've got officer elections coming up. So this actually segues a little bit into the next topic, which is, the transitions that we need to make, which are, is this something that we want to try and close on before the end of the year, which is doable. We've got, I think, at least 2 meetings of the outreach committee before everybody kind of disappears for the holidays. We can close on that in this, in this year, or we can say, look, it's, this is something for the next set of officers and administration to close on. Let's just record folks' comments on this, and then we'll just kick it to the next administration. So,
I mean, we should.
Mike, go ahead, Ab.
No, in my opinion, we should make progress. I mean, this is not like a one-person decision whether the chair, new co-chair. We're working as a committee, right? So that will continue, in my opinion. I mean, you're doing a great job. Actually, I would love if you can continue pushing us and keeping us honest here and making progress. So that's
okay.
That's my opinion, at least.
Well, let's do this. I think it's these. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I think I agree with that, and particularly because we have a great piece of content which is going to fall in the next couple of weeks, right? And we should be making the most of getting it out there, marketing it, and using Dan's team and all of our networks to make the most of it. It would be silly to say, oh, we're not quite sure we're going to do this until December or January or whatever, or February. So I think we should absolutely be executing to the extent we can right now.
Okay. All right. I have a proposal then. Let me know what you guys think on this. So I think it often works better when, these kind of discussions, to put something on the table, a straw man on the table so everybody can react to it. When it's a bit of an open-ended discussion, everybody can kind of weave back and forth. Let's put something on the table for the next meeting. And I think this will be a budget proposal that'll take into account a couple of different things. One, it'll take into account a kind of a mixed event strategy. Again, this mix of A and B. It'll either be like a 50-50, option A, option B bias, or a skew toward B or something like that. We'll put a couple things on the table. This also, in this second thing, which is the transition to content marketing, also has a timing issue in it. So, in 2026, we've said, hey, we're shifting away from events centric to content centric, and that's going to mean that we've got a couple things in order to make that shift. We've got to secure, professional content marketing services from the LF. We've got to create and manage a content pipeline with the members. Note, without the members contributing content, this is going to be a horrendous. It's either going to be a horrendous amount of work for the next officers. It is going to be a horrendously expensive thing where we have to pay other people to create content for us, or everybody chips in and says like, hey, here's AMD's got something new, FrontierX has got something new, and we're all stepping in to chip in, once or twice a year with something new. We need to determine and manage which outlets we're going to focus on, whether that is LinkedIn, whether it is the newsletter, whether it is, search marketing, whatever it is. We need to determine how we're going to do that. And we need to decide how we're going to monitor results and adjust tactics. So this is going to be a lot of significant amounts of brain power and work. And a lot of it is going to determine how the committee is going to approach this strategy. It is how we make this transition is a big deal. And so option one is, we can wait until the new officers are elected, which is, a couple weeks. And then they, over the course of December and January can build out, their vision of how they want to run this, because, essentially this whole strategy is going to be executed on their watch, not necessarily, mine and Rachel's as the 2025 officers. So, or option two is that the existing crew gets going now. We start working with Dan and his colleagues in the LF to start contract negotiations, plan out what January and February would look like, and then the future officers and the membership can make adjustments based on what we started. So we could do this from both an events point of view and from a content marketing point of view, or we can, one or both of these things, we can say, look, that it's too big a deal for the leadership at the tail end of their administration to make this call. It should really go to the next group.
So I think it's quite clear that, and partly from what Ab said, but I think generally that the leadership is not dictatorship. The leadership is working hopefully collaboratively and collegiately with the group, and providing, certainly, suggestions and pointing things and coming up with ideas, but it's not about they're doing only their thing. So I hope that whatever we end up doing is something that can be carried on rather than just restarted. Rachel.
Yeah, and totally agree, right? Just a couple add on to that. And right now there are something that are pending. There's budget approval conversation that's to be approved by governing board next week. And then there are also the decisions on the line item and what those outreach budget are going to be allocated to, and that are also pending. And we gather pretty good feedback so far from the members in terms of like event strategy and content marketing strategy. So we will still continue to work on these. And I totally echo with what Mike Bursell said earlier, right? And also what Ab said, like we're here and officers are here to serve the committee itself. And so regardless of the transition, the items are still needing to be proceeded. And for the contract itself, and I wanted to share some of the takeaways from the past years. So there were some the observations we've had in the past that when the contracts are signed too early, and there are some potential decisions or resource reallocations that could bind us to the legal contractual obligations when the contracts are signed too early. That's a risk I wanted to call out. However, for every step, all the decisions that are leading up to the final formality that needs to be continued to work on. So I would say that I don't think that's either option 1 or 2 here. So we're gonna work up all the stuff that we have committed for this year, and also completed all the planning for next year. And for the formality, and we'll leave that. My proposal is to leave that for the next year's officers to officially commit and sign off on those to eliminate the risks.
Okay, so summarizing, I think what you're saying, Rachel, is more, let's make some plans now. Let's start setting directions and stuff like that. But as far as signing off on contracts, that it's better to wait on putting ink to the bottom line, wait on that until the new officers are there and we're fully bought in to the new strategy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That seems sensible.
All right, let's do this. I don't want to just punt completely on this one, because otherwise, we're starting from zero come January. I think what we can start doing is laying out at least the terms of the negotiation, the different dials that we would want to maybe turn. And so that when we, go into the final, basically setting up the final terms of the contract, that the next officers will be able to come in and say, look, we want to set this dial here and this dial here and this dial here. How much does that cost? And we can build that, or and give guidance to the marketing team at the LF so that they know what we are seeking, and therefore be able to put together a package for us.
Yeah, that's correct. And in terms of
Okay.
requirements, right, and then good call out on the content pipeline. I want to mention that for the macro level, so at the GB level, and there's going to be an OKR tied to the member. So I think we're still waiting on that official guidance, and then outreach could be that part of the OKR and have the members, right, have a outreach OKR for certain members contribute some of those content and to be measured as part of that process.
Okay. All right. So I think we're resolved that we're going to do an option 1.5 here, which is, we're going to start laying out some vision and, kind of set the table, but the new officers are the ones to close the deal. Okay, last topic I wanted to talk about in the 7 minutes we have remaining is this question about how to navigate commercial content. The problem, of course, is that, we've got, we're organized, of course, under the Linux Foundation. Linux Foundation has certain goals and an ethos, and requirements as being a directed fund organized under this umbrella, and that those goals and that ethos are promoting open source and open standards that build and showcase the cooperative communities working together for the benefits of the industry. But our content, of course, is one of the things that we want to do, is be able to grow awareness and adoption of confidential computing by showcasing use cases that deliver customer value. So,
and case studies as well. I think, to be fair, it's not just use case studies as well, which are kind of subtly different, right?
Yeah, and I think a case study is as a use case that a specific customer
instantiated, yes,
instantiated, exactly. So if we, there's one point of view that says, hey, let's throw in and just showcase Google's products, Microsoft's products, this software company's products, and it's good for confidential computing, so just throw in. And that means that we're all over here on the left, but we are irritating and not supporting the things on the right. So we've got to find some way to strike this balance between the two viewpoints. And I have an architecture that we could possibly implement in order to do this. I imagine this as, a blog, but this could be or a case study write-up. It could be done, in much shorter form, but following some of the same principles. So I kind of view this as a commercial product sandwich, where the initial layer has to be a community problem or a challenge or a goal that is this is something that everybody has to deal with, or everybody who's in the class. Say, for example, it was government things, you would say everybody in government has this problem. And it needs to, we need to start by saying, hey, this is an area that could benefit from confidential computing. It is not a vendor specific thing. You're not coming in hot from the goal saying, my software solved this company's problems. That's not the starting point. The starting point is the general benefits of confidential computing as a category, and the benefits to this type of customer or this type of use case as a category. And bonus points if you can also check in with things like open source options here in the start. Then you move into the kind of the meat of the content, which is showcasing a solution, and that solution may be based on a commercial product as an illustration of how confidential computing can be used to address that broad challenge that was laid out in the first part. So this might look something like, at our company, we address this challenge with product A, and product A used confidential computing, maybe with some open source components, to solve this problem or help this company seize this opportunity that they were otherwise unable to grab. And then, again, to make sure that you're providing, it's like how the CCC and the open source software enhances this solution. You again provide, present the bona fides here of how the community, the open source is helping to solve this problem. And then it's a call to action, which could be links to both that specific solution. So it was software A that pulled this off. Hey, come learn more about software A at www.softwarea.com, or learn more about confidential computing and our open source technologies at confidentialcomputing.io. So this, I think, by taking commercial content and embedding it within a larger community-driven or open source-driven conversation, I think we can serve both the constituencies that we are that we want to do. It's going to show.
I know we're short of time, and I think the first thing I think I need something from Dan. Hi, Dan. I hope you've had a chance to be following this. And the question from me to Dan is OR sufficient, or does it have to lead with open source? Is CCC or open source sufficient, or is that not going to be sufficient? Do you see what I mean?
Never in my experience. I've worked with dozens of projects at the Linux Foundation. Have we ever done any sort of marketing that was not directly related to open source? Put it that way.
Okay.
So that is not something that I have the authority to say, yes, we can make some exception here. That is something that
I think we should be
clear much higher up in the organization.
The expectation is that really we do need to be leading with open source, saying the community that the CCC Foundation is not sufficient. That's really helpful. Thank you, Dan.
So Dan, I mean, is this proposal that I've put down, do you think that this would pass muster, or it would pass muster with certain conditions, or is it insufficient to it would basically be a burr under the saddle of the LF.
Yeah, for me, the or is the problem. Like it needs to be open source. Honestly, even then, it's a bit of a stretch when it's not directly related to one of our hosted projects. That's also something that I have seen happen, but rarely. Typically, like any sort of use case discussion would be regarding how one of the projects that we are hosting was used and all the benefits that it brought to an organization.
Okay. Oof, that's going to be a tough one because there's just honestly most of the products that people are selling and using are not pure.
They don't have to be pure open source.
Well,
they need to have an important.
Yeah. All right, we're starting to lose folks. I don't know if this is new.
That is this month's metrics, yes. Or, well, last month's metrics, yes. We hadn't reported those out yet.
Okay, so
good impressions.
Okay, just real quick. This one, I think we're just gonna have to chalk up as it's still unresolved. All right, Dan, real quick.
Yeah, I mean, self-explanatory, increases in audience size and impressions month on month. And you can see the #1 post was about the San Francisco event. That actually drove a lot of those impressions.
Excellent.
Great
All
job.
right. Okay. Any other business before we wrap it up for this week?
No, it's good.
Thanks,
Good meeting.
folks.
Yeah. Thanks.
Don't forget to stand if there's any chance you could be interested in a chair or vice chair position. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to go in touch.
Yes. Yeah. Please. Again, organizations like this live or die on volunteers. And if nobody steps up, then it's a big problem. All right. Thanks, you guys.
You do not want me running the marketing for this organization. Believe me when I say that.